What? Yeah, so yeah, you could use one.
I like how this happened, used to sit next to each other like they were.
Y'all may be seated. Let the record reflect that we're back in session and calls number M 333-686, case is solved. State of Texas versus Victoria Laura Smith. Let the record also reflect that Ms. Smith is present in court with her Attorney John Mason. State is present, Assistant District Attorney Andrew Huber, and Attorney Haley Simmons. State, are you ready?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
And defense, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, let the record also reflect that the panel is now present in the courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen of the panel, when your name is called, we're gonna ask that you come to the jury box. There are some name tags that's on the end of the jury box. You please take one, and then when you have your seat, you're gonna attach it on your clothing. At this time, you're in the hands of our court coordinator, Ms. Trina Redmond. She'll be calling the names.
Good afternoon. Jessica Leah Jones.
Jessica Lee Jones, would you please come forward? Get one of those tags and you can have a seat in the jury box.
Vanessa Bro Swan.
Swan, would you please come forward? You can get a tag.
Vicky Sheree Hardwick.
Hardwick,
Tyler Kent Milton.
Mr. Milton,
Randall Scott Startzel.
Mr. Startzel,
Irma Jean Goss. Michael Timothy Matojo.
you can get that tag, Mr. Montojo. It's right there. Everyone, please put your tag on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I must administer to you the second of the two oaths. So at this time, I need you to raise your hand again, your right hand. And once I finish administering the oath, please say, I do. Do each of you do solemnly swear in the case of the state of Texas versus Victoria Laura Smith, you will render a true verdict according to the law and the evidence, so help you God. Okay, you may put your hands down. Members of the jury, I will give you some instructions and a general idea of what to expect in this case. Every case is composed of facts and the law as it applies to the particular case. The facts comes from the witnesses on the witness stand. The law comes from the statutes, codes, rules, and court decisions interpreting them and how they may apply to this case. You and I have equal authority, but it is divided authority. You are the sole judges of the facts, and I'm the sole judge of the law. You are the sole judges of the credibility of the witnesses and the way to be given their testimony. You may believe all of what a witness says, part of what a witness says, or none of what a witness says. As the trial progresses, the attorneys will probably make objections to questions asked by the other attorney of witnesses, or objections to the introduction of documents or objects. This means that in the objecting attorney's opinion, there is a legal reason why the testimony of document or object should not be received by you. Sometimes I will simply sustain or overrule the objection. At other times, it may require a lengthy discussion outside of your presence. If that happens, I will either ask you to step outside for a few minutes or ask the attorneys to come up to the bench so that you can't hear the discussion on the point of law. The reasons for this, as I told you earlier, you are the sole judges of the facts you receive, and I'm the sole judge of the law. I can't be with you in the jury room when you deliberate the facts. Therefore, you can't be within hearing or present when I deliberate questions of the law. The reason why I will sometimes ask you to step outside is because it is simply the most efficient way to do it. Otherwise, if we were to leave the courtroom reporter would have to gather her equipment and take it with her, and the attorneys would have to gather their files, etc. Rulings I do make it on questions of law in your presence are not evidence, and you are to disregard them. After all the evidence is in, and both the state and the defense have rested their cases, the court will prepare and submit to you a written charge instructing you on the law in this case. We will then hear oral arguments from the attorneys. The attorneys have the right to make a summation of the evidence and to make reasonable deductions from the evidence. Since the state has the burden of proof, it has the right to open and close the summation or argument until you retire to deliberate. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves, and under no circumstances should you permit anyone to discuss the case with you. Do not attempt to learn from any source outside of the courtroom anything about the facts of the case, nor attempt any independent investigation on your own. Don't visit the scene involved in the facts of the case. Don't read any reports in the newspaper or watch television reports about the case. Do not make up your mind about this case until all the evidence is in and you have been instructed on the law. Don't take notes during the progress of trial. Don't visit other courts during a break if a trial or other proceeding is in progress. And we would ask that you please wear the badges at all times, identifying you as a juror in this case. Ladies and gentlemen of the panel, those of you who were not selected to sit on this trial, to serve on this trial as jurors. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention for being here today. I know that you wanted to have the opportunity to serve as jurors in this case, but I can assure you that your presence here was very important. The way our process is with voir dire, as one of the attorneys mentioned, it is a deselection process. And so the first number of people that you see in the jury that were not stricken made the jury. And so also I like to encourage you to come back to the courthouse, or you can watch it on YouTube. You can watch this trial on YouTube, or you can sit in the gallery and watch this trial. And anytime you're in the area, you can come and have a seat in County Court at Law Number 2, and this is your court. And I know that when you came here this morning, you were looking for County Court at Law Number 2, and you saw my name over the top of the door that says County Court at Law Number 2, Judge Terrence L. Holmes. You probably said to myself, oh, this is Judge Holmes' court, I'm in the right place. Well, you're in the right place, but this is not my court, this is your court, because I'm only a public servant, an humble servant, serving the citizens of Jefferson County. And you being the citizens of Jefferson County, this is your court. So anytime you're in the area, please come and have a seat in the area that you're sitting in. We call that the peanut gallery. But it doesn't mean you could bring peanuts in here and eat, because this is not the Texas Roadhouse. But you can come and see what goes on in Jefferson County, in County Court at Law Number 2. And I will submit to you, you'll be pleased. I will also submit to you, you'll hear and see some interesting things. Now, this will conclude your jury service. The bailiff have some letters for you if you need any excuses or letters. The district clerk's office is right across the hall. You can go over there so that they'll know that you did appear and you were here. And this does count as jury service because you participated in the voir dire process. So before you leave, I normally give everyone a handshake, but we're still under COVID. However, I still give everyone what I call an air handshake. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I would like to give each and every one of you an air handshake. And again, when you're in the area, please come and have a seat in your courtroom. So if you want to continue to watch, you can. If you want to go home and watch it on YouTube, you can do that as well. And if you want to leave, you are excused, and every one of you have a blessed day. Okay. We're gonna ask, you want to have them to step out? Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, just hold on a minute. We're gonna wait for our bailiffs to come back in. There's a matter that needs to take place outside of your presence. So at this time, would you please follow the bailiff into the hall? We're gonna be in recess, and so when we come back, when we are ready for you, they're gonna have you to come back in. Everyone, please stand as the jury exit the courtroom. Mr. Macy, would you like to make an open statement? Would you like to waive?
Yes, sir, I think I would.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Bugle, Your Honor. Um, I appreciate your attention so far. I'm gonna tell you what I think y'all will listen for. What I think the evidence is gonna show. The evidence is ultimately gonna show that Ms. Smith had some problems with a particular individual. And she actually, had called the police on this person. And they didn't deal with it. I think they dealt with it once. And then she had to call again. She wasn't supposed to be there. And it came back. And she called and they showed up. But by the time they showed up, it wasn't there anymore. And so she frustrated her, of course, because they couldn't do anything to him. He wasn't there anymore. So here it is, and again, happened again. And she called the police, she called 911, said, he's here. And then all of a sudden she called again. Said, where are y'all at? I called. You're not here yet. What's going on? And then she called back. How long do I have to wait? And they decided apparently that it wasn't so important that, you know, once they finally got there, that you can see it for 30 minutes later. By that time, she called 4 times. And she was really agitated, which, you know, they want to act like, oh, she shouldn't be. However, they are presuming that the reason when she called, it wasn't an emergency. Because if it was an emergency, that's an element that they have to prove. And so if it was an emergency, they can't prove their case, because in order to prove their case, it had to not be an emergency when she called. Okay, so listen for that. Listen to their explanations and things of that nature. Because yeah, they finally got around to decide, well, it wasn't really an emergency. We're going to go ahead and arrest her instead. Not immediately. They had to go back and try to figure out a way to do it, but you'll listen for that. And I think that when you hear everything, you're gonna realize that she didn't violate any statute. And even if there wasn't an emergency, and I would suggest that there is, and that's something you gotta determine. They also have to prove that the language she used was harassing or statute. The judge is going to tell you what it is. You're going to get that. Abusive, harassing or abusive. The speech. Now, speech, we supposedly is America, and right, free speech. And if she says something that you don't like, doesn't mean that she didn't have the right to say it. Now, they say that she didn't have the right to say that, what she said. So that's a question too, that you have to look at. Well, is it really what she said? You might not like it. but was it harassing and or abusive? Because it has to be. Because that's an element they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Just like they have to prove the other thing, which is that it was not an emergency. Well, I'm suggesting, look at those things. And then you come to your own conclusion, and you will, because that's what you're here for. And I think that once you do that, you'll find that they didn't prove their things beyond reasonable doubt.
Mr. Hubel, would you like to call your first witness?
State House Carolyn Lewis.
Carolyn Lewis?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
I don't know about
Oh, I said I didn't want to sure.
So in that case, Judge, there is a potential witness in the courtroom. So at this point, just state the both of them.
Okay.
And would you like me to bring out the other 6 witnesses?
Yeah, you could, bring all the witnesses up. You said there's a potential witness in the courtroom?
Yes.
Oh, a witness in the courtroom?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, he can come on up with the other witnesses. Once you come on up, you're gonna come up before the bench. And there are gonna be some other people that's gonna come up as well. I'm going to, yeah, you can stand right there and wait for the other people to come in. You don't have to stand by the podium, stand in front of the bench.
Yes, sir.
Everyone come up here. Okay. Then I have to give each and every one of you saw some information. Okay. Witnesses, the rule has been invoked. And that what that basically means that you're going to be ordered to leave the courtroom and not re-enter the courtroom unless you are instructed by the bailiff or by me. You are not to discuss this case or your testimony with any other witness or anyone else except the attorneys. You are not to read any report of or comment on. And I would add that you're not even supposed to look at the YouTube because we are airing on YouTube. And the testimony of any evidence, in this case, any witness violating this instruction is subject to being held in contempt of court. If you're held in contempt of court, you can be fined up to $500, and you can be placed in jail, Jefferson County Jail, up to 180 days. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to swear. First of all, does everyone understand?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I need every one of you to raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You may put your hands down, and we're gonna ask that everyone will leave the court except Ms. Lewis because she is the first witness. Okay? Just please exit the courtroom. Hmm? Just leave it like that. That's good so far. That's good. Okay. That's good. All right. At this time, Mr. Hubel, stay ready.
Please raise your honor.
Defense, are you ready? Ms. Mason?
I'm ready, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Hubel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Ms. Lewis.
Good afternoon.
Can you introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, I'm Carolyn Lewis. I work for the Lawrence Police Department 911 Center, and I have been there since 1992.
Okay. And can you tell me about some of your job duties?
Yes, sir. I oversee the dispatch office, ensuring that the order of operations in the dispatch center is functional. And I also manage to make sure that the shift supervisors are doing their duties as well as we all pull 911 recordings.
As part of your duties of BBD dispatch, are you a custodian of records for the 911 call recordings that are stored there?
Yes, sir.
And does that include the calls that were made in this case?
Yes,
May I approve?
Yes, you may.
I'm showing you what's marked as states 1 through 3. Do you recognize these?
yes, sir.
Are you aware of the contents?
Yes, I.
Okay. Can you tell me what the contents is?
It's from a 911 call that we received.
And so, how are these calls recorded when they come in?
The calls, whenever you call 911, our phone lines, even though the dispatcher has not answered the phone, dispatcher or call taker, although we have not answered the phone starts recording. We use the recording system by Equiture. So it's recording before we answer and it's recording up until we end the call.
So it starts automatically as the employee takes the call?
Yes,
And these recordings, are they kept in normal course of business as a regular practice?
yes, sir.
Okay, and how are they stored?
They are stored in the recording system. The only individuals that have access to the recording system that we log on with the username and password are shift supervisors and myself.
And did you have the opportunity to review these calls?
Yes, I did.
Are they exact duplicates of the originals?
Yes.
And at this time, state would offer states 1 through 3, publishing to the events for inspection.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, no objection. State's exhibit number 1 is admitted.
That's states 1 through 3, Your Honor.
1 through 3. Okay. State's exhibits 1, 2, and 3 are admitted.
This time the state would publish states 1.
Okay, you can publish it to the jury.
Call at 911, where's your emergency? Yes, sir, was when all the took me off in the outside, but this is what all in front of my yard, keeping in my car, I ain't able to off the here. Now we have your call, we're gonna get officers out there, he's called as well. Okay. Thank you.
Permission to publish states 2.
Yes, you may publish states 2.
Call at 911, where's your emergency? 3420 Austin Street, I can tell police yesterday, they called police as well. Yes, ma'am. But when is the police to my address? So when I'm not the way come here, I'm sure about what he called, something not to me, not protection. Ma'am, we have your call, we're sending officers out. Let them just see where coming out to me, that's what I'm saying. I just told you, we have your call and we're sending officers out, ma'am. But that's the only thing I've got to me, that's what happened. You called and we're sending officers out, ma'am. Y'all stupid as fuck, like, what's wrong with man? You have a great day. Thank you, honey. Thank you.
You may publish state three.
Oh my 911, where's your emergency? I'll get here, call 30 minutes ago, so I'm trying to tell them to take the deal. Have the office on the way, you can speak with them when they get there. Well, you can get another hour before they get here. You can ask them when they're around. I said, you have an attitude, you know you're a white bitch. Ma'am, they'll.
Published in states 1 through 3, those are the calls that you were able to review,
Yes,
and they are the exact duplicates of the originals that you have stored at BBB.
correct.
No further questions for this one.
Okay, Mr. Macy, you may proceed.
Thank you, Lord. Ms. Lewis, my name is John Macy. We've never met.
No, sir.
I just have a couple of questions for you.
Yep, go to the podium. Mr.
I'm
Macy.
sorry, you want me to, sorry, Jen. Was that you on the other end of the phone?
No, sir, that was one of our dispatchers that's also a call taker.
Okay. Do you receive calls also, or are you just the supervisor? I say just the supervisor, or are you a supervisor?
No, I do both.
Oh,
I
you do both.
supervise and
Okay.
I go in, if they're short-handed, I work in dispatch as well.
I see, but that wasn't you that day.
No, sir, it was not.
Okay. So the first call we heard was actually the second call she made, right?
Yes,
And the second call we heard was the third call she made, right?
correct.
And the third call that we heard was the fourth call she made.
No, there was only 3 calls.
There was only 3 exhibits, right?
Correct.
But in exhibit number 1, the dispatcher said, ma'am, you have already called, right?
Yes, that's what I heard.
Okay, so that means there was 4 calls, right? Well, anyway. You think there was 3 calls?
Yes, when I looked in the recording system, there was 3 calls.
I'll pass it on to you.
Okay, Mr. Hubel, you have any questions?
No further questions. May I just witness the rules?
Yeah, Mr. Macy, may this witness be excused?
Yes, sure.
Okay, Ms. Lewis, you're excused. And you may step down and you have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Mr. Hubel, you can call your next witness,
State goals, Dorothy Gray.
Dorothy Gray,
Yes, sir.
okay? Ms. Gray, you can come forward. You have previously been sworn in,
Yes, sir.
so you can take the witness stand. Okay, Mr. Hubel, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gray.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hi, I'm Dorothy Gray, 911 dispatcher. I retired for 30 years and still work part-time.
So you worked full-time at BVD 911 dispatch? in the past? Okay. And can you tell me about some of your duties on the job?
Well, we answer 911 calls. We enter calls for service. We dispatch officers to calls. We, enter missing persons, stolen vehicles, stolen articles. We do a lot.
And BVD dispatch, that, it's continuously operating, it's open 24/7?
Yes,
And hypothetically, if you were to receive calls for another agency, you would relay them to the appropriate agency?
yes.
Now, do you recall receiving a telephone call for assistance on the emergency line from Victoria Smith?
Yes.
And do you recall what the nature of that call was?
The call that I took was a disturbance call. I think it was about someone trespassing.
Okay. And did Ms. Smith make multiple calls that day?
I think I spoke to her twice.
So you had received multiple calls?
Yes.
Around that day. Have you had a chance to review those recordings?
Yes.
Okay, may I approach?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to publish once again, states 2 and 3.
You may.
Holmes 911, where's your emergency?
And the voice that answered the phone, do you recognize that voice?
That's my voice.
Like, when they on the street, I just tried to go to yesterday, they call police as well. Yes, ma'am. But where is the police to my address? So when I'm just away from here, I'm sure like we call something out to me, about protection. Ma'am, we have your call, we're sending officers out. Let's just see when they come out to me. That's what I'm doing. I just told you, we have your call and we're sending officers out, ma'am. But that's the only thing I've got to me, that's what happened. And you called and we're sending officers out, ma'am. Yeah, I'm stupid. That's why I'm like, what's wrong? Ma'am, you have a great day. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, near the end of the call, did the individual who was calling, ask, what are y'all, what are y'all stupid or something?
Yes.
Did that individual also call you dummy?
Yes.
Holmes 911, where's your emergency?
And on States Exhibit 3, the voice that answered the phone, is that your voice as well?
Yes.
Okay, the media is called 30 minutes ago, so I'm trying to tell them to take the media. Ma'am, the officers are on the way, you can speak with them when they get there. Well, you can get the hour before they get away. You can ask them when they arrive. I said, you know, you have an attitude, you must be a white bitch. Ma'am, they'll.
At the end of the recording of what's marked States Exhibit number 3, did the did the individual on the other side of the phone say, "You sure have an attitude, you must be a white bitch"?
Objection, Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself, he doesn't need to repeat it.
It's, it's for the record, the record can't, like, take down what's said on the report.
Okay, objection overruled.
When this was called, did her voice sound worried?
No,
Did it sound more annoyed?
yes,
Um, she'd also, she'd also asked if Mr. Lassane had called.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Did she also ask if Mr. Lassane had called?
Yes,
And you gave her that information?
yes.
How did she take that?
She sounded like she was annoyed.
And no, she made derogatory statements to you. Did she make derogatory statements to you in both recordings?
Yes,
Do you, regard that as a proper use of 911 services?
no,
Was that speech abusive to you, Amanda?
yes.
Now, can you explain to the jury why abusive calls like these are a problem for 911 services?
Because 911 is used for emergency purposes only. We have people that are calling in with life-threatening emergencies. Some people have been shot, stabbed. We have burglaries in progress. We have all types of babies not breathing. We have all types of emergencies calling in. And when you're tying up a line, that's preventing someone else that actually has a major emergency from calling in.
So Miss repeated calls on the emergency line did disrupt dispatcher's ability to take other calls.
Yes, because you're spending time on a non-emergency call when other people are calling in.
State estimates.
Mr. Basil.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Gray, my name is John Macy. I represent Ms. Smith, and I have a few questions for you. The first thing you said, or one of the first things you said, and my notes aren't great, but you were asked about being a dispatcher, and you testified that you took 911 calls,
Yes, sir.
and he asked you what kind of calls you take, and you gave a list.
Mhm.
And you said, well, stolen vehicles, and you said a couple of 2 or 3 other things. Do you
I said
recall
we
what you
enter
said?
stolen vehicles.
I'm sorry, what?
I said we enter stolen vehicles.
Enter
Yeah,
stolen
enter
vehicles.
Yeah, that's a part of the job. It's a separate part that we enter stolen vehicles, missing
When somebody
persons.
calls in to,
When the officer turns in the report.
okay. And then what else, what other kind of calls do y'all take?
We take all types of calls.
So what do you mean by all kinds of calls?
When people call 911 or they call on a non-emergency line, if somebody calls in a burglary, a stolen vehicle, a baby not breathing, or a car accident,
Right,
we take multiple calls.
right,
Yes,
okay. In the 911 system.
yes,
And then a second ago, you said something about non-emergency calls, right? Just now,
yes, we have a non-emergency
a
line.
non-emergency line.
Yes.
And what number is that?
409-832-1234
Okay,
or 409-880-3865.
You think that's a common, do most people know about that number? Or do you know?
Yes, we have people call the number into line all the time.
So, but you also have, people that call 911 for stolen vehicles and, as you refer to them, all kinds of calls.
Yeah,
right?
we have people call in.
Do you know whether they're all prosecuted for, by a claim that the call wasn't an emergency?
No.
Okay. Now, on the particular call that Mr. Hubel asked you about, he said states two, I think he referred to. And that's when, as the call was in reference to a query about her trying to verify whether or not Mr. Lasaint called on her, right? Is that right or no? Or do you call?
Well, she called, I think she was asking if the police were on the way.
Right, okay.
Yes.
That was the main reason she called.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, you characterized that as you were asked if she sounded worried, and you said you thought she sounded annoyed, right?
Yes.
So can a person call 911 about something and not tell you something else that the officers find out later?
They can call.
So when you say she sounded annoyed, that's your kind of speculation about that, or I mean, that's the way it sounded to you, right?
Yes.
But she could have been worried too, right?
I'm not sure.
Now, she people are raised differently. You agree with that?
Yes.
And they have kind of pet expressions or things that they may use, right? I mean,
Yes.
do you have any expressions that you use that you just use just because it's you? Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I understand your question, but not really.
You can't think of one. Excuse me, just for a second. You said when she made a reference to, and she said, I think, if I'm quoting it correctly, you know, stupid or something. You recall that?
Yes.
Do you know whether she uses that phrase just as a kind of a normal phrase, or whether you don't know that she intentionally or knowingly said it to be abusive or harassing, do you?
I'm
That's
not
just
sure.
the way you took it.
That's the way I took it.
And the third call exhibit was the fourth time she called, right?
I don't know whether it was a third or fourth.
Okay. So whatever number call that was, the last time she called, that's when she said or asked you a question about, or saying something suggesting that you must be a white bitch, right?
Yes.
And you took offense to that too, obviously. Why wouldn't you? Right, but, or, do you know whether she used that term intentionally, knowingly to make an abusive or harassing statement, or whether that's just the term that she uses, that you took as offensive or harassing?
I took it offensively.
Understand? But that, but that was the third or fourth, depending on how you count them, time she called, right? So she was concerned that the officer wasn't there yet, right?
I'm not sure, I can't speak for her.
Okay. You can't speak to her now about that question, but you can speak to her about what her intention was about saying some word, right?
About the way I took it.
Understand? But you can't testify because you don't know whether she thought there was an emergency or not. Can you?
No.
I'll pass it on.
Mr. Hubel?
Briefly, Your Honor. Mr. Mason talking about pet expressions. Is white bitch a pet expression?
No.
And whenever she insinuated you were stupid, whenever she called you a dummy, whenever she called you a white bitch over the line, that was definitely abusive towards you.
Yes, it
Right.
was.
And regardless of how she meant it, it was abusive towards you.
Yes.
That's what it was.
Mr. Mason?
I'm going for the questions here.
Okay, may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Gray, you're excused. Again, I'd just like to remind you that the rule has been invoked.
Yes.
You're excused. To follow the bailiff. You have a blessed day. Thank you. Mr. Hubel, you can call your next witness.
State calls Officer Garcia.
Officer Garcia.
Officer Garcia.
I mean,
Officer Garcia. Officer Garcia, you can come forward.
Thank you.
Officer Garcia, you have you've been previously sworn in, so you can take the witness stand.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hubel, you may proceed.
Thank you.
Wait, the bailiff. She, I think what you have to do is slide that, because it's sliding down. Get it. Okay. Mr. Hubel?
Good afternoon, Officer Garcia.
Good afternoon.
Can you introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Felipe Garcia,
How are you currently employed?
with the Beaumont Police Department as a patrol officer.
And how long have you been there?
I made 15 years, this past January.
And you're a certified peace officer?
Yes, sir.
So can you tell me about some of your job duties?
Well, as I said before, I'm a patrol officer, so if you call either our 911 line or the non-emergency number, patrol officers, come to the scene. So burglaries, assaults, trespassers, things of that nature, calls for service.
So you regularly respond to emergency calls?
Yes, sir, I do.
And did you respond to a call for service on August 20th of 2022?
Yes, sir, I do.
Can you tell me where you responded to?
I believe the address was 3420 Ogden, if I recall.
And that's in Beaumont?
Yes, sir, it's in the south end of Beaumont.
And that's in Jefferson County, Texas?
Correct, it is.
Now, can you tell me what was the nature of that call?
It originally came in as a trespassing call.
Okay. Now, do you recall who the parties involved were?
Yes, sir, I do.
Can you give me their names?
Victoria Smith was the caller, and the person that she was calling about was, his name is Rudolph Lassant.
Okay. Now, is Ms. Smith in the courtroom?
Yes, sir, she is.
Can you point to her and identify her by an article of her clothing?
Her right, sitting right there, with a brown t-shirt.
May the record look like the witnesses identified the defendant?
The witness will the record will so reflect. You may proceed.
Now, when you respond to the call, what was the situation like out there?
When I first, got to the scene, I interacted first with Mr. Lassant, who was waiting for police at the intersection of, I believe it was Ogden at, Red Needle was the intersection he was at.
During that response, did you have your body worn camera activated?
Yes, sir.
I approach?
Yes. Sorry.
Yes, you may.
I'm showing you what's marked as State's Exhibit number 4. Do you recognize it?
Yes, sir.
And what is it?
It's the, video of my body camera.
And a body worn camera is capable of making accurate recordings.
Correct, it is.
And you're a competent operator of that device.
Yes, sir.
And you've had a chance to review the contents of this flash drive.
Yes, sir.
And they haven't been altered in any way. They're a fair and accurate representation of what happened that day.
Correct, it is.
At this point, I will post the events in a second.
One that you, produced in the film. I have no objection, gentlemen.
No objections. That states exhibit number 4
Yes, sir.
is admitted.
And so it's been, judge has been amended.
Yes.
Okay. I won't publish this yet. Now, you had said that you interacted with Mr. Lassant on the scene.
Yes, sir, I did.
And do you recall, what his demeanor was?
He was calm. He wasn't yelling at all, when I approached him and interacted with him at the scene.
Okay. Was he across the street from Ms. Smith's residence?
He was on the street, on the city street.
And so at that point, did you go to Ms. Smith's residence?
As I said before, so I first interacted with Mr. Lassant at the intersection. He told me what he needed, which was the rest of his clothing, from Ms. Smith, who was inside her residence. At which point I then went to try and make contact with Ms. Smith. I knocked on the door, and, he only spoke with me through, the walls or windows, however you want to put it, but she did not open the door, for me.
Okay, and what was her demeanor like?
She was yelling, telling me that, we took too long, we as in meaning police. Our response time, I guess, wasn't to her satisfaction, and, she told me to get off her porch.
Okay, so she ultimately told you to leave.
Correct.
And that was even with Mr. Lassane still across the street from her?
Yes, several feet away.
Did she seem, no, so, did she seem annoyed?
Yes, she was,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Now, as a patrol officer, do you have experience responding to a wide variety of emergency situations?
Correct.
Okay. Would you characterize, your experience at 3420 Ogden as an emergency situation when you arrived?
In your honor, that calls for speculation.
It, based on his experience as a peace officer, he's had a lot of experience dealing with emergency situations. He's a certified peace officer expert.
Okay, objection overruled. You may proceed.
Now, is this in reference to, the types of calls I, respond to, or specifically at that residence?
When you arrived at that residence,
Uh, I didn't see anything that police, as a police officer, when I got there, there was nothing that I saw that needed police action, especially when I was told I was no longer needed. So in my opinion, I did not believe, police, were needed.
all right, so, and you respond to you said you respond to a wide variety of, emergency situations. Whenever you do, does the complaining witness who called you up generally make a report?
Yes, sir. Some type of, offense report, criminal report.
Did Ms. Smith do so on this date?
No, she did not.
She, in fact, did not want to speak to you directly.
No, she did not.
Okay. And usually whenever there's, sorry. And generally, if there's an emergency situation where someone makes a call about another individual who's trespassing on their property, they would be concerned if that individual is still near their property.
Objection, relevance, Judge. What somebody else may or may not think about some other call is not relevant.
And what I'm getting to is state of mind of the defendant in the situation, versus state of mind of, an individual whenever they're experiencing an emergency situation.
Well, sustain his objection.
After she had, told you to leave, you decided to pursue charges for abuse of 911 call.
Correct. So I wasn't the only officer that was out there. So seeing as how two officers were dispatched to a call for service, I checked with, our dispatchers, the people that take the calls for service, and asked, how many times, did Ms. Smith, call in either to the 911 line or to the non-emergency line? And if so, what, line did she actually call specifically?
And based on that information, you had decided that this was a good case for abuse of 911 call.
Correct, that is.
At this point, statement published states 4.
Okay, you may publish states for.
Man. Y'all still together? Oh, man. So what's the deal now? You were asleep? And what happened? She woke. How much stuff you gonna be able to carry it? Which one, the front door or the side door? It's the police, Mr. Victoria? He's across the street right now. Does he have any other clothes? All right, ma'am. Have a good day. She says she ain't got nothing for you right now, man. Come back when she's, in a better mood, I guess. Yeah, exactly, man. We don't wanna be doing this.
I didn't say you had to.
Oh, yeah, we hear her. I didn't run her. He's clear. I checked him on through. Yeah. So that case never went anywhere, mhm. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, we can't force our way in there, man. Yeah. She came out, she was like, yeah, get my, talking, oh, there she is right there, talking to the police, she was, through the window, she was like, no, y'all get the fuck off my porch, police, y'all took 30 minutes to get here. I'm like, all right, have a good day. Jeez, man.
And what was just shown in, what's submitted as state's exhibit number 4, was the contents of your body worn camera.
Yes, sir, they were.
And after you left her porch, Ms. Smith actually came outside. um, and essentially yelled across the street at both you and Mr. Lassane.
Correct.
And you had said that 2 officers responded. Did it actually end up being 3 officers?
Yes.
Okay.
That was my, another, supervisor.
Okay. Can you identify the?
Like I said before, the responding officer that was dispatched out with me is, Officer, Josh Radcliffe. And the officer that, shows up at the tail end of the video is Sergeant Howard Dragan.
Okay. But neither of them actually personally went up to Miss Smith's residence and spoke with her.
No, sir, just me.
State custody witness.
Mason.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Officer Garcia.
Thank you, sir.
My name is John Macy. Okay, so you were dispatched to Ogden Street because what you said was, you believed it was trespass.
That's what the call came in.
Understand.
That's right.
And the first person you saw was Mr. Lassane, correct?
Yes, sir. He,
Was that the first time you'd ever been dispatched to that location?
no, sir.
When was the immediately prior time you were dispatched there? Do you recall how long ago, how many days previously it had been?
No, sir. I couldn't give you a definitive answer on it.
From a guesstimate standpoint, was a week, a month, a year?
Again, I don't want to say a week when it's a month. I couldn't. I don't want.
Sometime, you'd been there before.
Yes, sir.
When you were there before, at some point, did y'all give Mr. Lassane a trespass warning to not go there again? Do you recall?
I don't believe I ever issued him a trespass warning. Maybe another officer did, but I can't recall that I ever did.
Do you know whether or not there was a trespass warning issued to him?
Again, I don't want to testify.
You either know or you don't. If you
I do not.
don't know.
Thank you.
So you didn't check to see if he had a trespass warning, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay. So if he had a trespass warning, should you have told him, come back later when she's feeling better?
If
I mean,
how you just said it, if he did have a trespass warning, of course I would not. As a law enforcement officer, I would have told him, if I did know he had a trespass warning, I would tell him to stay away.
And so I want to make, so if there's a trespass warning for someone, because you testified that you do cause for trespass, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, that's what you were doing there.
Right.
Had he been on the premises still, you could have done something about it, right?
If he had a trespass.
Understand. So if you were there for trespass and he were still on the premises, then you would have checked for a trespass warning. And if he'd have had a trespass warning previously, you would have arrested him.
Correct. If it was still valid and he did have one, yes.
Right.
Yes, sir.
But when you got there, he was no longer on the premises, so it wouldn't have mattered because you couldn't have arrested him for a trespass warning when he was no longer on the premises, right?
Correct.
So do you know whether or not Ms. Smith had ever tried to, let's see how I put this. you had responded to to that house before you testified.
Yes, sir, I have.
Was it an incident between Ms. Smith and Mr. Lassane?
Yes,
So at least once, they already had an incident, and this was at least the second time. Because when you saw him, you just said, what are you doing here? Or something to that effect, right?
yes, sir.
Because you've been down that road and you needed him to stop doing that, right? If,
If it was causing
If it
issues
was-
with them too, yes.
yeah, it was causing issues, so, but, and so you're just doing your job, I'm trying to be fair to you. You get a 911 dispatch, you go there, and you go and knock on her door, and starts basically kind of saying, I think she said, not the way you characterize it to your boss, she said, get the fuck off my porch. She didn't say that. She said, get off my damn porch, I think. Okay. Semantics.
Yes,
You use that word just because sometimes you use that word, apparently, right? People use words for whatever reason. You weren't trying to lie.
no,
That's the way you characterized it.
correct.
And so, but what you were trying to get across was that you went there to try to help her, and she just said, get off my porch. And so she didn't even give you a statement, right?
No, she did not.
And so didn't that irritated you because you went all the way out there trying to help her, and then she won't even talk to you, right?
I wouldn't put it like how you're saying.
Okay, so at some point, and on that video, because I don't think we saw the whole thing. Do you recall having a discussion about, well, we could just, or, we could arrest him because he's walking on the wrong side of the street? Do you recall that
Yes.
discussion?
Yes,
But you want to do something to make it real to them. Do you remember saying that? You wanted to express that you thought that they were playing games with each other and involving the police, and y'all were tired of it. And so you needed to make it real to them, and so you were trying to figure out, do I arrest him? Or do we arrest her? And then you made some statement of, well, and then at some point you contacted 911. And then you basically said something to the effect, and if I'm trying to see if you remember saying this, something to the effect that, oh, no, I don't mind doing this one. I don't mind arresting her for charging her with abuse of a 911. I'll be more than happy to do that. Because you were irritated because she told you to get off her damn porch when you went all the way out there to help her, right?
well, you're making it seem, the way I would put it is, to use your word, irritated, is more to the fact that we were not one, but two officers, and then after that, third officer responded for a call for service. And then the person that called us said we weren't needed.
Right.
And then in addition to what happened with the 911.
She actually didn't just say you were not needed. She said you were no longer needed because you took too long, right? That's what she actually said, right?
If that's what I can't remember exactly what she said, but
So do you know whether or not this is, when you went out to, you said this was at least the second time, you said you'd been there before.
yes,
Do you remember when you went there before, whether you arrested anybody?
Again, I can't.
You don't remember. You might have arrested somebody if you saw somebody doing something you thought was illegal, otherwise you wouldn't
Correct.
have. When you first got there and you saw Mr. Saint, you asked him, I think the first thing he said was, "What are you doing here again?" or something. And then you asked him, "What's going on?" And he said, I don't know if he said it, I think he said something about just waking up, right?
I asked him,
You
I
asked
was
him,
trying to ask him, hey, what happened? Were you inside the house? But on the video, I think I'm hearing myself say, did you just wake up? And then
and he said yes.
I can't remember what he said.
Well, irrespective of that, do you know whether he just woke up from inside the house or from somewhere else?
I do not know.
So just because he just woke up and happened to have a bag with some stuff in it, didn't mean that he had been in that house that day. But he could have been, actually he probably was, or at least he was on the premises, because she called saying he's trespassing, right?
Again, I did not see him.
You didn't hear that, you didn't take the 911 call, you just took dispatch, said, hey, there's a disturbance over there on Ogden Street, you need to go over there, right?
Trespassing, yes.
Right. Have you ever gone to a call when somebody claimed trespass and it turned out to be more serious?
Yes, sir.
Not pass the witness, Judge.
Mr. Hill?
So, Mr. Mason is asking about a trespass warning. You said you don't know anything about, you didn't know anything about him having a trespass warning on that day.
No, I do not.
Okay.
I do not know.
Okay, you still don't know.
No.
Okay. And to be clear, whenever you went to the door and tried to assist Miss Smith, she didn't want to your help.
No, she did not.
So you did not investigate any further because you didn't have any information to investigate anything on.
Correct. If she made some type of allegation, of course, as a police officer, if somebody tells me a crime was committed, I would take a report.
And on the video that Stacy said before, you referred to clearing him on video. Can you tell me what that means?
I believe before I got there, I had ran him on our dispatch, one of our channels, to check to see if he had any warrants.
Okay.
And when I said he was cleared, that means there was no such warrant.
Mr. Macy was asking about some previous incidences in which you were called out to 3420 Ogden. Do you get called, does BBB get calls often about Miss Smith and Mr. Hussein?
Yes,
Okay, and you have to respond to all of them?
correct, yes. Again, if somebody calls 911 or the non-emergency number, call for service, we have to go.
So with responding to all those calls, and in fact, if responding to the call in question in this case, take officers away from responding to other calls.
Yes, sir.
So this would create an issue if you needed officers to respond to like other more life-threatening situations.
Correct, it would.
State has no further questions.
Mr. Macy?
Briefly. Officer Smith, Garcia. You don't know of any specific life-threatening calls that you didn't get to go to because you had responded to that Ogden call that day, do you?
I do not. It was so far back, I couldn't do it.
Okay.
Steve,
State has no further questions for this one.
may this witness be excused?
Yes,
Okay. Officer Garcia, you're excused. Just like to remind you that you are under the rule. And please do not talk to any witnesses or look at any news reports.
Yes, sir.
Right. You may step down and you have a blessed day.
Thank you, y'all too.
Call your next witness.
And at this point, the state rests.
State's rest, okay? Mr. Macy and Mr. Hubel, they'll come forward. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're gonna break for the evening. It's almost 5 o'clock. And we're gonna ask that you report back to the court on tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We have, some business that we need to take care of at 9 o'clock, and so we figured we could be through by 10 o'clock. So when you come to the courtroom, to the courthouse, make sure you have a seat outside the courtroom. Make sure that you have your badges on, so that when you come into the courthouse, it will identify you as being a juror on a case. All right? Now, at this time, we're gonna ask everyone to stand as the jury exit the courtroom. You can just exit the courtroom and follow the bell. Order be in recess.